So we're ready today for the next step on the Evil Twin project. And it's going to be an involved story. I want to tell a little story first. Now the objective is I want to try to have a spare exhaust system that's stock. This is not a stock exhaust. This is from an 86 with the black chrome. But I do have the parts now to make one. I want to show what I've been thinking about, and maybe it's going to work out okay. Now up in my rafters for several years has been the original exhaust system that came with the motorcycle, and it's quite a story behind it. This is really the bowels of the earth when I got to get up on a ladder and get up here. We have buckets and buckets of mufflers and parts, and oh my God, there's stuff up here I forgot I have. Body work from bikes I don't even own. But there's one thing that's really good up here, and I know that exhaust system is up here. I got to dig it out. I'm not sure you can see it, but up here there's a lot of secret stuff. Here's the cafe seat for the Suzuki. So it's a long story. This is the original exhaust system. Came with the motorcycle. And I had made this tail section up years ago, and it couldn't have been any funnier. We were making model airplane exhaust systems with a resin that had a 350-degree temperature range, maximum continuous exposure. And what happened when I took that resin, I made these mufflers for the GS. The mufflers were rotted right through at the bottom from being 25 years old or whatever age they were. And I wrapped them with carbon fiber, and what I did, I made these cones for the end so they kind of looked like Norton mufflers. And it was a crude thing, but you know what? It worked a few years, 4 or 5 years or whatever, but eventually the carbon fiber just self-destructed because it wasn't made for continuous high temperature use. And for anybody that doesn't know, the exhaust of a 2-cycle engine is about 100 degrees cooler, roughly, at least when they're running nitromethane. Alcohol and nitromethane, they run about 100 degrees cooler than a 4-cycle. Now I had made 4-cycle ones, but never ones that lasted this long. They were great. But my point for telling this story is Dave Midgley and I did some homework, and Dave managed to get me some resin that had a 500 degree maximum continuous exposure resin. I made this set of mufflers that's now 8 years old, and they don't even have a pinhole in them. So my point being is that as you do projects, I kind of learn from every, or almost every project, I learn something that's valuable to me. Now this exhaust system, the one from the 86, which is on the bike now, I'm not sure it has any benefit other than the fact that it's pretty, it's a nice shape. And this is one of the things that I'm pretty creative about doing. The exhaust system that I have that came from this bike, from the donor bike from Philly, what happened is the mid pipe, this pipe here, is really, really rusted and corroded to the point where it's almost unusable. The two other pipes, I'm not sure how usable they are, and I'm not sure these shields, the chrome shields, if they're usable, decent, whatever. But what I have 2 spare exhaust systems, and what I want to do is play Mr. Potato Head. I think I can use these head pipes, and I can because the ones on the other Evil Twin, these are black. So, and I always have the thing of taking it down and getting it sandblasted and painting it flat black, but I really don't want to do that. I like the look of keeping it stock, and always the look of having 2 mufflers. Now, I'm not sure exactly why, but all of the pipes seem to rust right behind here, and maybe that's where moisture gathers, I don't know. But the good news is you don't really see that when you put the pipes up in position. In fact, maybe those black ones over there are rusted when I take them off the bike next time I remove the exhaust. I'll find out. But these are keepers. There's parts on here that are worth keeping, and I'm so glad because I've heard of and seen a lot of guys that buy a custom exhaust and throw the original one in the garbage or put it on eBay for 15 cents. Oh, I'm so glad I didn't do that because now I have 2 complete exhausts to work with. So step 1 is, while I'm having my coffee, to think this through. Now I have 2 choices. And one has, I wire brush some of the loose rust off of this. Of course, you can use chemicals and you can use naval jelly and everything on earth. But if you notice the way this one rusted in the corners, this one didn't. And that trick of what I would do when I would put the bike away for the winter, of spray always the exhaust with some WD-40, seems to have helped. So that's step one, is to kind of look at these and see which of the two makes the better candidate for my #1 spare part. Like draft choices, like drafting the first guy you want out of college. So my first little tip of the day is, anytime you have any spare parts for a motorcycle you intend to keep, save the parts. Put them up in the rafters, coat them with oil or grease, and save them. You never know when a day like today is going to come and you want to use some or all of them. Now, what I've been trying to do is every day do a couple hours of prep, cleanup, getting parts, getting bolts ready. And this video will go over several days, I'm sure. This is a gigantic job to restore an exhaust system, but we'll do it in bites. Now, from the original exhaust, you can see just how corroded and how rusty. And that rust, this is something I've learned. Whoa, as the part goes flying down. One thing I've learned when you have rust like this rust here, yeah, you can take some chemicals, that'll get some of it off. But this is really pitted. It's right down to the pitted in through the chrome. So what I'm saying is there's no chrome underneath it. So what would happen, boy, I'm getting sicker than a dog here. What would happen if you just keep polishing until this goes away, you'll be through the chrome. What I did to the other spare part, just to see how deep these pits went, and you can see after you've already buffed them out, yeah, it doesn't look too bad. And I tried a couple of the other things that I'd seen on YouTube, like rubbing with tin foil, and none of that did what I wanted it to do. But I guess there are some applications where that would work. The problem is this piece is really, I'm going to have to get in there with a wire brush. I'm going to have to do a lot of cleaning. See, there's a dent on this part, but you don't see it. The good news is these parts have very little damage in the part you see. And this, I noticed there's some, boy, I really am getting sick. I'm going to have to go to the doctor. These are things that if you grind them off and polish, you just wind up with deep pits. That's corrosion that's underneath the chrome. So that, we're basically going to have to live with that. But the rest of this polished up pretty nice. And you really don't see, it's amazing, the parts almost on purpose, they corrode exactly where it doesn't even matter. But we do want to clean them up. That exhaust system comes apart in several parts, but this is the part you don't see. But, and again, I've said this, if you do put a bike away for the winter, put some oil. All of the parts where you see rust is where if this had some grease or oil, it wouldn't be greasy or oily. And because this is from a bike that's, I'm sure, had a rough service life. I'm looking at the header pipe. That's really rusty. I don't know, and I don't know how good these are going to clean up, but I want to clean them up as much as I can. And in this case, there's another reason. These parts are unobtainable. So the other choice I would have, of course, you could just open up your checkbook and go get them re-chromed. That's usually never on my list of things to do. So basically over the next few days, I'm going to spend an hour here, an hour there, maybe some time at the end of the day when the baby goes home. And I'm going to try to clean these parts one at a time. And the idea is from that carbon fiber exhaust set and from this set from the donor bike, try to come up with one relatively rust-free, maybe with the chrome 80–90% of what it could be. And that will then be my spare evil twin exhaust system. The other choice is then when I put, assuming I do it, I live long enough to rebuild the engine in the other GS, what will happen, I will already have the exhaust system prepped up and ready to go. Because this is going to be a multi-day project and I'm just going to be working on it a little bit every day. I'm trying to look at which one of these looks like it's in the worst condition. This one looks a little worse. And this is the best idea I can always think of when you plan out a long project. Don't try to do it all in one day. You know this is not going to happen in one day. But I know, start with the smallest part first and just see how they start to clean up. And the first thing I have to look at is what what little wire brush. I have the small one, will fit right in there. That'll do. Get some of the corrosion out of there. And luckily have a nice small one just in case I need it to get where this will work out great too, is in between the fins. Now, one of the problems with these parts, the middle ones come off, the other ones stay on the pipe, so I'm going to have to do this while it's on the pipe, turn it around, basically do it a lot more complicated when it's still on a part. And it's always good to look at the part and figure out ahead of time which one we have a big wire wheel, little one, the drill press, and a small soft brush. But see, one that'll put the finish on that you're looking for. And to be honest, it looks like this is going to come up relatively quickly. It's going to be time consuming, but it looks like we're getting rid of all this corrosion and all of this that would... Now remember, these parts are 37 years old. So the fact that they're a little rough around the edges, I'm a little rough around the edges. So you can get just a little bit of an idea how different that, when that's done, and every time I can get some of that corrosion off, just going to prolong the life of the part. And it's also going to look just a little bit nicer, I think, when it's all mounted up on a motorcycle. Right, these two are ready to put on the clean table. Now, the only problem, of course, we got to do the other ones. Maybe we have to do it, well, they're going to be attached to the pipe, so it'll be a little more challenging when we get to do those. But we'll put these two on the clean table for now and move on. Now, there's two pieces for this has to be taken off. These come off in this little cover, and then what that cover is going to allow me to do once I polish it up and clean it up, I'll be able to pick the best parts. When I do any swapping of the exhaust, I can play pretty much. If the one on the bike has a little corrosion, I can use this one. Well, I can't really swap these because that other exhaust that I have, the 86 exhaust, I had to make carbon fiber brackets where this hole is way further back. But these will be my spares, and as long as I'm doing cleanup work today, we got a lot of work ahead of us. There's a couple of days of work. And every time I deconstruct the donor bike, I find more, I don't know what to even call it. This one, you have a lock washer on one, you have an ordinary screw on the other. One, the bolt was so tight I had to use an extension wrench. The other one was hand tight. So I try not to do work like that. And a typical thing that happens with a lot of people that don't use tools regularly, I guess, and somehow they don't understand that Phillips head screws have a number. And if you use the wrong screw on it, it just makes a mess out of things. And, well, that's one lesson to learn. A lot of lessons as we pull this apart. This is why any bike I restore, I like to go through the whole thing and check everything. Here, in this case, there's screws that are missing. They're not even on the bike. Now in this case, you can see the amount of rust on the inside of this part, but the outside is still pretty good. But if we don't get rid of some of that rust, what's going to happen is eventually you're going to get those little bubbles forming on the chrome. And this, by the way, looks like it's in pretty decent shape. This part should clean up nice. And if I remember right, the one that I have on the bike from the 86 exhaust does have some scratches and stuff on it. So again, what this is going to allow us to do is play Mr. Potato Head. Here's just one of the little detail things I have talked about. I made another video about cleaning bolts up. Look at what came out of the bike. 10 seconds on a buffing wheel. Changes everything. All right, I'm going to start doing these parts and getting them clean one by one. It'll be interesting to see if these clean up quickly. These are going to clean up no problem at all. And all of this stuff, this corrosion and everything that comes off, the sooner you can get it off, of course, the easier it is. And now these, once I put a little bit of wax or oil on them, they'll be preserved for a long time before that corrosion will come back. And another piece over on the clean table, one by one. Every part here is parts that are ultimately going to wind up being first run or spare parts for the Evil Twin project. Now this part is really rusty. I'm wondering if that's going to clean right up, but I know getting that rust off of there is an important thing for this restoration. I don't want to have this part that a couple of years from now I start to see bubbles in the chrome. Now one of the things that really works well for rust removal, these, I call them the orange wheels. We got a couple of them, different shapes, and here's another one in fact. And these work really well. You don't want to ever touch chrome. If you touch this to chrome, it scratches. But it's great. These work out great for pulling rust off. Now it takes a little time. I was trying to demonstrate how that would take it off, but the material, of course, the material is pitted underneath it. But a lot of this, you can just put in an electric drill. A lot of it I may have to even just get in there by hand. I don't know, hold one of the tools by hand, but that's a great tool to have in your arsenal when you're doing restoration work. Now that's perfectly clean enough. We don't need to get any more out than that. Now what I'll do, of course, is put either WD-40, some kind of oil, something on that while it's in the time that we're going to be just waiting to do the next part of this Evil Twin project. Now this side is not bad. Got some corrosion up here I may be able to get rid of on the buffing wheel. Now, let me get a paper towel. The reason it's so worthwhile to do this restoration and maintain these parts, because every time I look at Partzilla, what parts are still available for this bike, it's shorter than the day before. And it's an exhaust system parts, they've been out of stock for 20 years. So we have jewelry here, we want to keep it that way. One more part onto the clean table. And assuming you want to keep your project bike, there's nothing, to me, nothing more important than have some spares. Either a spare bike, spare parts, and if you have spare parts and you just let them rust away, well, see, what I'm trying to do is establish all my spare parts as even better than new. Now the next step on this project is to look at which one of these parts would clean up the best. And I've got to look at both of them real carefully. They both have defects. And here's the point. This, and I laid them out in a way, this is the part you're going to see. You're not going to see from here down, of course. So what I'm looking at is which pipes look the best in the front. What's in the back you really don't see. So I've got to look at these carefully, pick the best one that's going to be our number one part that we're going to polish up. And the other one, we'll just put some oil on it and put it in storage. Now let me just explain what the purpose. I picked this part. The other one has some dents in it. This one has less rust here in the middle. And the part that's rusty back here, I can clean that up in a very short amount of time. Under here you don't see. So I want to, the point is, on the parts you don't see, I want to remove the rust. On the parts you do see, I want to polish them. And this up here looks like there's some little corrosion, I can get that off. And there's one little dent in the pipes right here, which I'm sure you're not even going to see. So these would make a great donor set for me to work on. And I'll probably spend the rest of today just working on cleaning them up. And a lot of times, if you think about, your life is not infinite. So you have this amount of time. And if you spend it wisely, like an example would be, we could spend an infinite amount of time polishing this. That's going to show. A limited amount of time getting the rust off only so it doesn't corrode anymore. And the part that we're not going to see, I'll just run a wire brush on it and be done with it so it doesn't corrode anymore. Now I see what Suzuki did with this that was pretty smart. Yeah, they put a coat of silver header paint on it. I may have to go down to Lowe's or whatever. AutoZone has header paint. Yeah, they header painted everything that you don't see. They header paint. That sounds like that sounds like something worth doing. Now here's another tip. And I have learned this the hard way. When you're using a wire brush, the hard wire brush, it'll put scratches in chrome that they're very difficult to get out. What happens is the soft wire brush will see some of the corrosion up here, I can get off, because you're not going to see this, but I just don't want the corrosion on there. So this in the back, I'm going to use nothing but a soft wire brush. Because I don't want to take off any more material than I have to just to get rid of the rust. Now, and then the last thing is, once the corrosion is removed, then the last thing is, go over by the buffing wheel. And usually what'll work on chrome is black compound. Now, I have some, but sometimes you got to do an experiment, black compound, red, green, whatever. But I'm only going to worry about buffing up this part. The reason is the amount of time I have to spend on this as a spare part, I want it to be as clean as I can make it reasonably. But let's be realistic, it's a 37-year-old part, and I'm not going to live forever. So there's a lot of reasons. So I want to spend my time wisely, and same thing with the big muffler parts. Spend the most time on the parts you see, and just enough time to get rid of the corrosion on the parts you don't see. See, a lot of times the problem is, how do you get the buffing wheel in there, or the polishing wheel, or the wire brush? Well, combination of the bench grinder and this, and in the worst of all worlds, you can bungee cord it to a table and do this with an electric drill, I guess. May have to do that. See, some of the parts are just hard to get to. But again, I'm using a soft wheel. I don't want to really gouge into this more than I have to. And most of it is coming right out. And what I've done is gotten rid of what I thought was as much corrosion as I could, the rust. Again, I'm not trying to polish parts that we're not going to see, but I wanted to get as much off as I could. And now it's off to the buffing wheel. And we want to spend a lot of time, like to get this part of the pipes as nice as possible. Now for some of this polishing that we're doing, I have a much smaller, wider wheel. It can get into some of these little angles and areas that I'm working on. The big wheel is good for doing nice in-between grooves, and a big wheel a little bit better for doing inside curves. What happens, the smaller, wider wheel, this is a little less diameter, a little wider, lets me get down inside the crease of the pipe where we will see it. Now, any kind of polish, and this is just one, I'm just using up polish that's a year old, 2 years old. We're going to get all new stuff in the spring. And any kind of pad, just to get a final little puff on it. And what this allows me to do, see, I can't get that big buffing wheel in there, but I can get this in there. And this takes a lot longer to do than the buffing wheel, but we'll still get that part done. I can see already that's going to come out when all these parts are done, and that's going to be probably an hour of work. This is really going to look nice. So we got a chunk of it done today, and I couldn't be happier the way this turned out. I'm not sure you can see it, and it's certainly, I would never make the case that it's as good as a brand new chroming job for $500 if you could get somebody to do it and do the job right. A lot of times you can't even get anybody to do it. So anyway, that's part of our restoration. That's only one part, and I don't want the videos to get so long, so we're going to do the rest of those mufflers on a tape in the future, a video in the future. We just have so many projects in the shop right now. I'm happy to share them and hope you enjoy watching them as much as I enjoy making them. But thanks for watching.